co-sponsored by PennFuture and the TTF watershed. So welcome. We are still seeing people join this webinar. Thank you for folks who have dropped in where they are from in the chat. Feel free to do that. Looking at the list before this started with everyone who replied, it seems like we have some amazing geographic representation from around the state. So welcome, everybody. Pardon. We'll give it about another minute or so here. Looks like there's still a few folks trickling into the webinar. Thank you all so much for joining us. Again, local elections, why do they matter from the environment? With conservation voters, Lead PA, Democracy for All, PennFuture, and the TTF watershed. I'm so glad to see all of these folks popping in from all over, liking some of the commentary. Thank you for joining us. We are recording this. We will be posting this on our site. We also have some wonderful staff here who will be monitoring the chat. We encourage people to ask questions throughout the entire presentation. We will be leaving a substantial amount of time for questions towards the end, and our wonderful team will be compiling all of those questions and going through them. So thank you so much for joining us. Please remember, this is a recorded presentation. And it looks like I think we have critical mass now. So welcome, everybody. Again, my name is Katie Bloom. I am the Political and Legislative Director for Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania. And welcome for coming out to hear about local elections. Why do they matter for the environment? And, you know, if you or someone you know might be interested in local office. Next, we'll get started on the next slide here. All right. What local offices are up in Pennsylvania? Pennsylvania has one of the largest, the second or third largest number of municipalities of any state in the country. So the local offices that are up in 2023, we have 500 school boards. School boards rotate their membership. There's a range of numbers of members of school board, usually just depending on the size of the district. Some have 7, some have 9. School board directors rotate, you know, so 3 will be up 1 year, 4 will be up 2 years after that. So there's some institutional knowledge remaining. The same goes for most elected, municipally elected offices, supervisor and borough as well. I'm going to put a fun trivia fact. First person to actually get the answer correct. We have boroughs, we have townships, we have multiple different classes of cities, but we only have one town in Pennsylvania. And if anyone knows who it is, you get a shout out. I know someone is on here from that county. So we have 500 school boards, 67 counties, and 2,560 municipalities, boroughs, townships, etc. Excuse me. Jessica got it right. Emily, come on. You live too close. You're a panelist. You cheated on that one. So we have so many offices that are up. In about, I want to say 60 of our 67 counties, we have county commissioners who are up. In the other counties where there are county councils, kind of like municipal elections, there's a rotation. So some of those county councilors will also be up too. So boroughs, townships, cities, we've got mayors coming up in a few places. These are all critical elections. County commissioners, some folks have prothonotary, recorders of deeds, and some offices that people don't always know a lot about. So there is so much up in 2023 that it can feel very overwhelming in terms of what we're trying to find great people to run for. So that is, oh yes, Philly will be major. New mayor and all, and it's already a pretty crazy field there. Next slide, please. So why are local governments important? And I know we got an early question about this, that it seems that a lot of things that might be related for the environment in particular happen more to local level compared to a county. In some cases, that's true. But as you can see here with this little graphic, there is so much that people are affected by in their day-to-day lives. So whether your street is getting plowed when there's a weather event, to sidewalks getting fixed, to people having water and sewer accessibility, and sewer plans so we don't have polluted water. Yes, Hadley, towns that ban plastic bags, etc. And thank you, John. Judicial elections are also incredibly important. We have magisterial district judges, county common pleas judges in our 3 state appellate courts, but we're going to be focused on sort of the more municipally and county elected elections here today. There's a lot on the ballot in 2023. There's 2 elections every year, and we need to remember that. So some of the things that matter are going to be, people think about taxes and local taxes. People often, we hear in Pennsylvania, oh my goodness, I'm paying all of this in property tax. A lot of that actually goes to, say, school board funding or county funding, and it kind of filters down to more localized municipalities. But all of that impacts what a municipality can and cannot do. As you can see sort of on this little square I have here is building licenses, permits. And Hadley brought up another great idea. You're beating me to my agenda, Hadley. Is we have so many opportunities, county and locally, and even on school boards, to do some really positive things for sustainability, for the environment overall, for workers and communities. So there's an option to do, yes, conservation districts. We have zoning and setbacks. Setbacks can be very important. We're having a lot of conversations in a lot of Pennsylvania communities lately about things like stormwater fees to mitigate the effects of climate change and to, you know, have the funding to improve, expand, create new stormwater infrastructure to help mitigate some of those climate issues. There is a wonderful partner that we regularly work with at Conservation Voters and PennFuture called We Conserve PA. And for people who really want, I don't want to go into the weeds for everybody, but for people who really want to go into the weeds, there is an opportunity there's sort of an ordinance resolution bank that you can find on there, whether you want to advocate locally yourself, or if you are or want to be a local elected official. Thank you, Tim, for dropping that link in the chat. You can go there and they have some ordinances and things to get people started. But the other really important thing, and I know some of you are members looking at the attendance list, are also local environmental advisory councils. And I don't want to leave out what we call ABCs. And that's authorities, boards, and commissions. And maybe you're thinking, or someone you know is thinking about running for local office, but maybe they're not quite ready. I definitely want to lift up authorities, boards, and commissions, ABCs, as ways to start getting involved and to start learning about all of these things like setbacks. And we love our environmental advisory councils or commissions. Next slide, please, because I want to sing a tale, if you will. This is what one town of about 870 people did on this slide here. Millheim Borough, Pennsylvania is one of, I think now 5. Last year, I think it was 4 municipalities in Pennsylvania where they had all of their municipal electric accounts now run by solar. So this is one thing you can do as a local municipality. It takes some work. There is an investment. As you can see, it's a PPA agreement, power purchase, and the energy offset for this, and it's not that big of a solar field, pays for the municipal building, the water plant, and the sewer plant, which you also see in that picture. It does not pay for the streetlights. It's very weird. It just doesn't cover the streetlights because there's too many individual lights and wires or something very weird about that. But this is, here we go, frankly, what we have done in Millheim, Pennsylvania. To some people on this call, this is not a shock. I am the Borough Council President in Millheim, and there is a lot that you can do. And I want to talk a little bit about my experience. And I know Oliver and Emily and I are going to talk about it more later. But there are things like this that you can do, especially even in smaller communities where maybe people don't think things like this can happen, but we are looking, not only do we have a solar field, we have worked with our county conservation district because we have a high excellence stream that goes right through town to make sure that we have great riparian buffers along the streamways. We have worked with local farmers to work on some of that land and what is known as the Penns Valley Conservation Association to also do some work, and there's stream cleanups and things like that. And small municipalities can end up being very engaged, and the turnaround and the benefit that we explain to the community, because not only are we saving a whole pile of taxpayer dollars, I want to say $12,000 to $15,000 a year of taxpayer dollars in having solar instead of paying electric bills, we are also making sure that that high excellence stream in our community is taken care of and stays high excellence because it's part of Pennsylvania's very, very lucrative outdoor recreation economy. So there's trout fishing and hunters coming in, and that also generates local income for a small town. So this is kind of a very brief, this is what a little small town municipally elected official, and we have a great, great borough council here, and we have worked very well together for everybody. So that's kind of the rundown of what is up, the things you can do, and a little bit of a success story. So I'm going to turn it over to Oliver.
Thanks so much, Katie. That's super exciting to see. And I love these types of stories about the impact that local elected officials can make. My name is Oliver. I'm the co-ED of LEAD PA. LEAD PA is a recruitment and training organization building the progressive pipeline and bench in Pennsylvania. So happy to partner with all the organizations on this call. My remarks are going to focus on recruitment, right? I think we are in the moment right now where a lot of communities, if you're plugged into your local community, you're probably looking ahead thinking, who's going to run, right? There's probably people who are rolling off of these elected positions or gaps that you've been trying to fill. So I want to give some information to help you think about how to recruit folks. So let me share my screen. And okay, all right. Can everyone see this? Katie, good? Everyone see this? Great. Here's my email. I just want to, right off the bat, share my email. I want to be a resource to you all as you're thinking about recruiting and looking for resourcing for your candidates coming into the 2023 election. So running for office comes down to a simple question. What change do you want to see in your local community? And so if you're thinking about running for office yourself, or you're trying to find folks, really clarifying the why, right? What's the story? Why do you want to do this? Running for office is hard. It's weird. It's a very demanding journey. And we'll talk about some of the stories with Katie and Emily. But this fundamentally is the main question that you want to ask yourself or have folks ask themselves when they're thinking about running. But there are some other exploration questions that I always ask when I'm talking to folks about running, right? There's always a time commitment. How much time can you dedicate to campaigning and governing, right? Yes, there are board meetings. There's probably other committee meetings. You want to be responsive to your community, and so you have to carve out time to respond to all of their concerns. Geography, where are the meetings held? Right? If you're looking at a county role, you're probably going to meet at the county seat. So what's the impact of that new commute? How often do you need to be there? How will this impact your finances, both on the campaigning side as well as the governing side? A lot of these local positions are technically part-time. They might have a stipend. They might have a little bit of pay, but most of them aren't full-time jobs. So how will this impact your finances? So do you have can you carve this out into your schedule? Do you actually need to change your job? So there are some employers that might feel a certain way. There might be some restrictions on the types of roles you have. Like, do you have business with the county or the municipality? So things that you should really think of. And then the public life. How will you and your family handle the public scrutiny, right? Do you like being anonymous in a grocery store? Because once you become an elected official, you might not be anymore. And then with the rise and proliferation of social media, that's also a factor to consider. And then what's the role of your family, chosen blood family, however you define family, in supporting you in all of this. So when you're thinking about it or trying to coach someone to think through all of this, really getting an understanding of where they are in this consideration set, because it is quite the journey, as I think there's some folks in the room here can attest to. But if you get the green light and you want to move ahead, there is a process. So at a very, very high level, right, you have to submit paperwork to your county board of elections that will include either petitions, nomination petitions, or papers. We'll get into that. There's probably maybe a filing fee. And you have to submit a statement of financial interest. So there's the paperwork side. You want to raise money because you want to pay for campaigning activities. So you want to form a campaign committee to support that activity and open a bank account. And then you'll have to file periodic campaign finance reports to be accountable to the public of how you spend the funds that were coming in. And then you embark on your campaign and you win office. So at a very, very high level, that's what's involved. And so I just want to talk through a little bit of the process for major parties, which would be the two major parties here in our system. You want to seek your party's endorsement. So if you're running for a county position, you want to contact the county party. If you're running for a municipal position, a school board position, what is that sub-county party entity? And then you want to collect and file nomination signatures, petition signatures. So this is all managed by the county board of elections. And these are benchmark numbers, right? If you're running for a county commissioner, prothonotary, sheriff type of position, you're likely going to need 250 signatures of that party, of electors, voters within that party. 100 for a city, 10 for a borough or township, 10 for school boards. And school board positions you can cross-file. So that would mean that you're submitting a petition for one party with signatures from electors from that party, and then a second petition for the other party. And again, you want to confirm all of this with your county board of elections and your local party. For the independents in the room, you have a different path, right? Because as we have a closed primary system, you're not going to file the same type of paperwork as the folks who are seeking the major party endorsement and nomination. So you want to confirm that you have an independent party registration, because I believe that there is a stipulation that you need to be an independent 30 days before the primary and continue being an independent through the general. Again, check me on that, check with the county board of elections. You also have to collect signatures, and the limit here is different. This is about at least 2% of the highest vote getter within that particular election district from that last election. So that's going to fluctuate here. But again, that process is going to be a little bit different, but you can still access the ballots as an independent for the general. And again, always check with your county board of elections on this. And then this timeline. So the Department of State has not released the dates yet, but just referencing the previous calendars, this is what my guess would be in terms of when the petition period would be and when the independent nomination period will be. Again, the Department of State will publish this all on their website, but just for those who want to advance plan, want to put some markers in your calendar, these are the dates that I would suggest putting in. And then once they release that with the Department of State, then update your calendar. So how does LEAD help? So we do have some trainings coming up for folks in the room who are interested in school boards. This is the website for a training collaborative of LEAD and a bunch of other organizations training for school boards. Lead also trains campaign staff that is in the process of potential calendaring. We're cooking up an MDJ training. It's breaking right here. So you got the scoop, everyone here on this call. So we are looking at completing an MDJ training. And then we can also connect folks to other training programs. There's a lot of different organizations that provide training. And I think going to a candidate and campaign training is one of the best things that you can do to really strengthen your candidacy. But we also provide support in recruiting and scouting. So if you like this conversation and you have a group in your local area and you want to elect progressives into office, we can do this in your local group too. We can have a small little Zoom get together and we can chat. If there's someone in your community that you're like, gosh, man, that person would be really, really great, but I'm having trouble trying to convince them, let's talk. This is what I'm here to do. And then if you're a prospective candidate and you're not sure, I'm happy to talk to you as well to help you arrive at a decision whether to run or not. Right, for the greater movement, we want the best candidates to win. And if you're not ready, that's all right too. We can talk about how to get ready. Sign up for our email list at our website, leadpa.org. You can email me. You can also, for the Twitter folks, you can tweet or DM me. I put my handle there as well. And I will be sharing this with the team. And so in the post-event email, you'll get a copy of this as well. So I just want to make sure that folks had those dates. It's pretty important thinking ahead for the 2023 cycle. So I want to conclude. I'm going to stop my share here. And I think we should start a conversation. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
And I want to lift up, formally introduce Emily Gale. She is the director of our Democracy for All program.
Well, thank you. I am so happy to be here, listening and learning along with everybody else that's here. I'm excited to get into our little discussion. Are we ready to do that?
Yeah.
I am ready.
Great. Well, Emily, you were also a candidate for office. And Katie is an elected official. So the first question that I have for you, and let me get my notes here. What motivated you to run for office?
I'll go first on this one.
Yeah.
In 2015, there was just a lot of complaining about how things were going and how our mayor at that point in time was doing things. And there was like a lot of people were complaining, but not doing anything about it. And so I said, you know what? I'm gonna actions speak louder than words. I'm gonna run. So that's how that came about, because I have a passion and a love for Williamsport. I live in Williamsport. Yes, I ran in 2015 against Mayor Campana. And I wanted change, knowing that change has to start with one person. So that's why I ran, because change needed to start.
Yeah. And Katie, what motivated your run?
Very similar, actually. We had, when I first moved kind of across this county to where I am now, also I'm in Center County, we had a substantially older council, a council that was just doing things as things had kind of always been done, addressing the needs, not necessarily thinking about what could be. Our business community had worked really hard over the last decade to kind of revitalize our main street. And we have wonderful programs that begun, and a lot of that was sort of our small business community working on that, but nobody was kind of thinking beyond. And that was one of the reasons I ran. Not just the change, but sort of new ideas, fresh ideas, not about, less about making sure town looks pretty, although we still have ordinances, people, but also about, where can the community come together to do really neat things that benefit everybody.
Great.
Yeah, and let me just say one other thing, and like Katie said, Another reason was to change the mindset. A
Mhm.
lot of times you see the same people in the same office, and it's usually an older generation making decisions for a town that needs change to happen. So,
Yeah.
it starts with one person.
Yeah, we have a small rural borough council, and with the exception of our tax collector, so this also includes our constable, our mayor, every elected official is under the age of 50 in a little teeny tiny rural town. And that's been some work, and that's been some recruitment and talking to friends and neighbors to do this too.
Yeah, and if you look like at the prior to 2015, 2016, that was the way it went. And even though I did not win mayor, it started the conversation, and the younger generation started to step up to the plate. And if you look at the age now, we have a lot of younger, under 40 people in city council. I think our mayor, maybe, I'm not quite sure.
Margaret, you absolutely are. We had 2 vacancies due to death that were vacant for like 2 years. So we had an incredibly senior, some very senior council members, so that were just there.
Well, I think that we all have to work together.
Yeah.
But and Margaret, in regards to that, I do agree. I'm a senior, so I agree with you 100%. But I think we all need to work together to be able to see the future of our community as well.
Um, so when you were considering running, you probably had some early conversations. Did you run into any people who doubted you, right? Who said, you gotta wait your turn, or I'm not sure if you're really ready, or, this city or this place, usually likes this type of elected. So tell me about those types of conversations.
Oh my. Every which way I turned, why aren't you doing it the right way? Why aren't you running for city council? The Democratic Party is not going to support you. You're alone in this, and blah, 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 blah. And you know what I said, I'm supposed to do this. Change doesn't happen by giving up or giving in. I mean, I had so many obstacles, and a lot of misguidance as well. I wish I had lead PA and other organizations to work with at that point in time. But, I jumped right into it without a plan, without, the recruitment, the create the field plan, the list of volunteers. I jumped right into it. And I can remember the president of the one party came up to me. Actually, she came to my house, knocked on my door, and said, you need to run for city council first. And I said, that is not where I can make a difference right now. And this is what I am supposed to be doing. So, you just got to do it. If you believe in what you're doing, stick with it, because change will happen. I mean, the more naysayers, the more I said, I'm doing it. Even if it comes out of my own pocket, I'm doing it, So that's what I did.
Yeah. How about you, Katie? Did you face any naysayers?
Yes. I my town has been changing over the last 10 to 15 years to becoming certainly more conservative than I. And this town is majority, I'm sticking nonpartisan here. This town is majority conservative, 1.5 to 1, with a growing number of independent voters that could go either direction on their ballot. And I'm part of that smaller percentage. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, the town's getting more conservative. You're younger. At the time, I wasn't quite 40 yet. I was like just turning 40. And you're younger, you're not a local. There was a lot of kind of old boys club. This is a small rural town, right? was actually getting married the year that I ran, not that I've changed my last name anyway. But, you know, I didn't have a local last name. You know, my husband grew up out in this part of the county, but people knew him. And it actually got some votes when he was like, oh, my wife is running for council. Women still perform on the ballot in this tiny town worse than men, even of the same party. So there were a lot of people going, oh, are you sure this is something you want to do? You're not that much of a local. I'm like, I've lived in this county most of my life, you know, 20 miles away. We've owned a house here for a decade. So that was a lot of what people were talking about, but getting out and knocking doors, which is really easy to do on a small municipal race. Sitting on my porch, having people walk their dogs by and I'm reading a book or drinking a beer in the summer going, hey, don't forget to vote. I'm Katie, I'm on the ballot. Some really interesting things, and just having conversations with people put a lot of that to bed.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, at the end of the day, it's right conversations, one-on-one conversations with voters, listening to what they want, sharing your vision, right? That's how you win votes. What surprised you about this process, right? As a candidate, was there anything you're just like, I was not prepared for this, or I didn't know I needed to do this?
I'm the wrong person to ask, Oliver. Mainly because
Fair.
I've been in this business for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I think
nothing
really,
surprised you?
I think it's almost the opposite for me. I'm used to bigger campaigns and big money and things like that, you know, using all of those tactics. I didn't need a radio ad. I didn't need a newspaper ad. My town is like 870 people in it. I can knock every door in like 3-4 days, depending on the weather, right? But that's not the same for every municipal race. And there's some municipal races like Emily running for mayor of Williamsport, like that's a way bigger voting population. So I actually went in with too many tools in my toolbox for this race, and it just came down to conversations. So I think that's really what surprised me as a candidate. And also the other thing that surprised me more, I'm so used to having been in this business for a long time. You know, for lack of a better term, you know, working with candidates to market themselves to their voter base. And with municipal elections, because these are things that impact us day to day, like, you know, your water hookup fee and those little things. Just having open, honest conversations and listening a lot.
Yeah, listening a lot is definitely important, and having those open conversations. I don't think anything surprised me while going through this. I learned a lot, you know. Um, the conversations was the biggest thing. I know that what I should have had was someone to be able to, a comms team, you know, make sure I'm saying the right thing instead of, you know, saying something that's gonna piss off some people, excuse my language, but it's true. Um, Especially when crime was a big issue back in 2015. It always is a big issue, but you know, the wording in where I wanted to change, I really wanted to change the way the police are running Williamsport, and that just like went off like a lead brick, you know. So it sparked a wave of controversy. Um, and then I think I also sparked some controversy between the two universities here in Williamsport, because I suggested, like a lot of other, other areas, you know, having a bookstore within the community that serves both, so that more people are coming into downtown Williamsport and it thrives better. Well, that also, you know, sparked a nerve, I think. But, you know, you live and you learn. I might have handled it better by talking to some people prior to saying that and it being go in public. Other than that, there's a surprise at every turn, and you learn to roll with it and go with it.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And then kind of building off of that, right? Reflecting on your experiences as a candidate, what is one thing every prospective candidate should know?
I never ran for council to be council president, and I am now. That was not my intent. So 100% when you are thinking about running for office or you're talking to somebody about running for office, know what the job is always, always, always part one. Know what you're getting into. There's a lot of things people ask us to do, and I'm like, that's not borough council, talk to the county or something. But frankly, it is the time. It is the time commitment. I spend more time now working on borough council endeavors than when I was just a council person. I didn't plan on being council president. Like, it's kind of cool. But know that the size of the municipality also changes the amount of time that you're putting into it as well. I'm pretty lucky. We have a great small team, but we don't have, a full-time manager plus a secretary plus a treasurer, right? So if we need to write a grant, sometimes that falls on myself and our part-time borough secretary to try to write a grant with help from our borough engineer, right? And that can take some time. If you're in a larger municipality, there's clearly a lot more staff and people who might have that specific job to do those things. But I would say, really think about the time. You have to read your council packets or your supervisor packets and pay attention to the budgets. It's not just go in, have a conversation and vote.
Yeah. And I would say from a candidate perspective, it's getting out in the public, knocking on doors. You can have a team, that helps you, but the reality of it is it should be you, taking the time to knock on the doors and talk to people. People want to see you, and be able to talk to you about their issues. And again, listening and making sure that as you create your speech, your stump speech, that you've got the community in mind, because it is about community, not just about no, maybe it is. I mean, for me, it was about community. Some people are about, moving up the ladder and moving on, but the big thing is making a change in the community.
Hey, Katie, on your point, right? Like knowing the job, right? So for folks in the room who might be new to this, right? They've maybe been involved in their community, but this side is like, this is what we call the electoral side, right? Where do you start? Like, how does one start trying to get that information about researching the office they want to run for?
So the very first thing is go to a meeting. They are publicly advertised. Go to a meeting. A lot of them are Zoomed now as well since the pandemic. Even though folks are back in person, there's often still a virtual option for at least viewers, or they post the meetings later. But all municipal bodies are required to post both their agendas and their minutes publicly. Please, please, please go read those. They might not always be the most informative, but you can see the kinds of things, at least more general topics that are being discussed. Engage in public comment. I got very lucky. Again, the one thing about the small town is, a few doors down, the old council president happens to live there. And I was like, hey, what's this going to be like? Am I right for doing this? And the best word of advice is that he ever gave me was always think about health and safety first. Whether it is, as Emily was working on, what's going on with, say, the police, what is going on with accessible sidewalks, that's a health and safety thing. Water and sewer, health and safety. And make sure things really tie to that. I think that talking to elected officials, reaching out to friends. You can reach out if you're involved at all in your county party structure. You can reach out to some folks. You can also ask maybe a neighboring municipality, hey, can I shadow you for a day? Some people are willing to do that. And absolutely check out some of the online resources and minutes and agendas, minutes and agendas, minutes and agendas. That way you get a real feel for what's going on.
Great. Yeah, let's move to some of the questions in the Q&A. And I'm reading this question from Michael from Anvil. You're touching on something that I was also curious of. So let me ask my question. Let's hope that the content and the responses gets to your question. All right. So we were intentional in designing this session specifically for local office, for the environment, right? So taking it back to a bit of Katie's remarks earlier, why is it, again, I just want to really underscore, why is it so important that we get good folks at this local level? Like, you know, you talk about the solar, the work in solar that you did in Milheim, but like, where can like a local office or county office really flex for their community as opposed to the state, right? We spend so much of our time and energy and money, right, in the even years trying to win at the governor level, at the state legislature level. And then sometimes we see like the energy kind of go away in the odd years. So like as an elected official at the local level, like, yeah, where can these local municipalities and counties really flex for the environment?
Yes, planning and zoning and codes, planning and zoning and codes. Elected officials also have the power to appoint to the ABCs, the authorities, boards, and commissions. So your county electeds are going to be able to appoint folks to the planning commission or the, I'm forgetting, there's a lot of acronyms in my head, and this is one I'm actually not remembering, but the municipal planning, there's a more transit focused, I want to say it's an MPPO. Anyway, there's a lot of different types of planning out there where you're looking at transportation. Transit authorities, also an environmental thing when we're thinking about taking cars off the road and expanding access to public transit as an environmental justice issue for both air quality and job access. Excuse me, counties and municipalities have access to influence all of these decisions. For example, with SEPTA, the county commissioners appoint in southeastern Pennsylvania, they appoint who sits on the SEPTA board. And that can have some massive impacts. So there's a lot more than just planning, but also appointments, also county budgets. Are you investing in, I want to say it's Delaware County? They have a lawyer who works a lot on environmental kinds of crimes, you know, illegal dumping and things like that. So there's a lot more, and some of it does depend a little bit on the class of county when you're starting to talk about county budgets, where impacts can be made. But there is going to be an environmental avenue almost anywhere you look. Who's putting,
Great.
county commissioners can put solar on the county building.
Okay, great. The next question that I want to move towards is, maybe this one might be suited for you, Emily, is how can we get young people in the pipeline, right? Those are the ones who are doing a lot of environmental activism, advocacy, or how can you get them in the pipeline doing advocacy and activism just besides voting? You know, we usually wait until young folks are 18 to treat them as citizens, but what can we do now to get them in the pipeline?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of civic engagement work that they can do. They can learn about local elections. They can volunteer on campaigns younger than 18. They don't have to be, I mean, I'll give you an example. I have a young lady that when I came in 2008, she was young, and she was volunteering with her mother, learning all about, you know, government and, well, I think it was a presidential election at that point in time. But, you know, I found her the other week and she is still involved, you know, and she remembers learning about local elections and volunteering, knocking on doors, going with her mother to the polls. And then, you know, there's a lot of organizations now that actually do democracy defending work within the school districts, you know, letting the younger generation know that you have options and that you should know ahead of time prior to your 18, what those options are. So it's a lot of civic engagement training and just being involved, and it comes from the parents down, or if there's a child that's interested, being able to direct them in the right direction. And volunteering, service work.
For sure, for sure. All right, there was a question that was directed to me. So do we offer trainings for other offices and school boards? So this year, in anticipation to the massive response and energy, both at the local, state, and national level on school boards, that's why we moved into this training collaborative for school board office specifically. But if you're looking to run for a municipal or county office or support someone running for a municipal or county office, I would suggest you sign up for the school board training, because the bulk of this training is what we call bread and butter candidate training, right? How do you talk about a message? How do you create a field plan? How do you create a finance plan? And how do you assemble a team? And so all of that is transcends school board specific stuff. Of course, there will be school board stuff, but we will not be doing a specific training for township auditors or township tax collectors in this cycle. So we will be doing trainings for school board candidates, which will be open to other folks. If you want to attend that training, feel free to email me. We can talk about what office you're running for, the candidate is running for. And then if we when we finish development on the magisterial district justice training, we'll be launching that as well. And then there's another one that's lead offer training, offer civil or nonviolent conversation training to help people have productive conversations with those who may disagree with them. Yes, as a candidate, we do talk about messaging and messaging training. So that is something, you want to think about your door script. You want to learn how to pivot in a conversation. I think learning how to pivot, getting back to the message that you want to talk to as a candidate is very, very important, right? You have a vision that you want to share with your community. And there are ways and skills that you can develop to help really pivot that conversation to land that in a place where you want to go. All right, next question. As a young person who wants to be more active in voting and aware of what is happening in my community, how can I best find information about who is running? Usually there's a lot of information and research of all the candidates that can be overwhelming, and finding information that isn't extremely biased can feel like an uphill battle. So on the civic engagement side, on the voter awareness side, what are some resources that can help people parse through their local elections, right? We don't have the same infrastructure in odd years and even years.
Yeah. And there's a couple places. Sometimes county political parties will have links on their websites. Not every county party necessarily, but sometimes that happens. County elections offices will have, after the primary results are certified, we'll certainly have a list of the general election candidates posted on county websites, the election websites, with sample ballots for your precinct. And I also recommend looking at the League of Women Voters. That's another option for, I think, the vast majority of counties. The League of Women Voters is a solid nonpartisan source. They usually submit questionnaires to candidates. Candidates fill them out. It's regularly published, sometimes online, sometimes in local newspapers, clearly digitally as well with those newspapers. And people can see the responses to those questions from the League of Women Voters. They're also a very handy resource.
Great. Thanks for dropping the link. I love, y'all have a great team with everything dropping. I just want to say that, just dropping the links, monitoring the conversation. So thank you so much for the team here. There's a question here. It's very campaign specific. So which of the presenting organizations endorse in this upcoming cycle? Well, I will start out and say that Lead PA does not endorse. Our offer to the community is training. Once you become a candidate as a C4, we don't directly coordinate. And so my colleague loves to say, we will love you from afar. We'll be reading from you from afar. So Lead PA does not endorse.
Yep. PennFuture, TTF, Democracy for All also do not endorse. Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania does endorse in races. Hopefully you all went out to vote for all of our endorsed candidates last year at the state level. In terms of what, who, where we are endorsing in 2023, we have not made decisions about that yet. If you remember my slide at the top of this hour, there are 2,560 municipalities, 67 counties, 500 school boards. We clearly cannot endorse everywhere or at every level consistently. So we are examining right now this winter where we probably will be doing some work. And I see Fred has jumped in with Sierra Club, also endorses. I work very closely with their legislative and political director, Jen, as well as Clean Water Action, Clean Air Action Fund, et cetera. Sort of these statewide environmental organizations. We are going to be putting out questionnaires. I do know we're going to be looking at some of the counties and county councils, some of the mayors, some of the larger municipal races. Not sure how small of a population municipality we're going to get into, but we'll see. We're still making those decisions, and I will not make promises about where at all until we figure that out.
Thanks, Katie. I see a question in chat from Mark directly at LEPA. Does LEPA vet people for training? We ask all the folks who apply to our training to state their agreement on a host of value statements. And so we want to make sure that the folks we do let into the training share our values. And if there are responses that raise a flag for us, we'll start a conversation and understand where you're coming from to start a conversation there. So that's where we go. We ask everyone to apply on the school board training. If you go to the website, Citizens for Public Education, there are very school specific ones. So if you are a municipal candidate or working with a municipal or county candidate who wants to access that, again, contact me and then we'll work through that process. Great. All right. So again, questions are open. We do have 5 minutes. So if there are no more, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I saw somebody clarifying zoning, planning, and codes. If I could clarify that.
Yes, go for that.
So zoning is what types of uses are allowed. Planning can also help, like wider community planning will take into account infrastructure, not just land. Zoning also then sets, is this a residential district, a commercial district, a shared use district, et cetera. But you can also end up, doing setbacks from roadways. Are you getting a new development in your township? Does your planning or zoning commission, it changes a little bit who ends up having which kind of authority on very nitty-gritty kinds of things between planning and zoning. But hey, we have a new development going in. Hey, developer, it doesn't look like you have a stormwater plan. Why aren't you planting more trees here? Do you have public transit access in this new development? Those are kinds of things that those authorities, boards, and commissions and elected officials can also look at in the process. So when I say planning and zoning, that is the kinds of work that I'm referring to.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, Corinne's question, can local officials change zoning like single family zoning to help neighborhoods have more mixed use? I think that's another example of a zoning decision that's taken by local officials.
Yep. And to do that, I would absolutely start going to zoning meetings. Start going to council or supervisor meetings. Yes. And ADA being included in development. Actually, ADA is legally required to be included in new developments. I'm not sure. I'm not part of our codes office. I'm not up on the universal building codes and everything, but yes. Again, they are all publicly posted. All authorities, boards, commissions, supervisors, councils, cities have to post their agendas and minutes online, and you can go look them up. And most
Yeah.
counties, and I say most because we have some friends in some very tiny rural counties, like in the northern tier of Pennsylvania, but most counties will also list all of their municipal meetings. As they list municipalities on a link on their website, they'll list when those municipalities meet.
Yeah, and usually every municipality has a website. I can't say all of them, but usually they do. So thank you so much for joining. This was a huge turnout, which shows I'm quite energized by how many people showed up to this, because we're talking about zoning and planning and codes, right? And people to get elected to make decisions on zoning, planning, and codes. Which for, I think, most of the general public seems to be very much minutia, but is very important when thinking about these decisions impacting communities. So I just want to thank you all for coming. You will receive copies of the slides. So feel free to work through that, reach out. Please email me if you have questions about recruitment, about our trainings. We here at LeadPA want to build a robust pipeline, which means, talking to you folks on the ground who know your communities well. So we want to help you get good folks elected. So thank you so much for joining. Again, a recording will be shared, handouts will be shared via email. And I'm not sure, do you all have other events, other things to pitch while we have folks?
I don't think immediately. I am not seeing any of our wonderful team pop off of screen here.
No, but certainly in a follow-up email, we will definitely let you know.
Yep.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Again, huge thanks. Thanks for showing up for your community. Thank you for showing up for the environment. Thank you for being partners in this work.